Black Lives Matter wants to get paid for votes.
Mr. Reagan.
Patrisse Cullors, the Marxist founder of Black Lives Matter, wants to get paid for the votes that she believes won Joe Biden the election. In an open letter to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, Patrisse Cullors wrote that without the resounding support of black people, we would be saddled with a very different electoral outcome. Never mind that actually Trump improved his position amongst black people this election cycle, and among women and gays and everybody. Never mind that, according to Cullors, black people gave Biden the win, and it's time that black folks get paid. Specifically, Cullors wrote that, quote, "We want something for our vote. We want to be heard and our agenda to be prioritized." Okay, that's not how this is supposed to work. Let me teach you a little America 101. Candidates for president present their vision for the country, and we as voters, we vote for them based on that vision. Candidates are not supposed to run for president with the promise of being the most pliable and having the least resolve. No. You don't want a candidate with principles. You want a candidate that's easily manipulated by special interest groups. I mean, it's actually amazing to me, the gall of these far-left radicals. I mean, I guess I should be used to it by now, but I'm not. It still amazes me. They're constantly shouting that we need to take big money out of government because major corporations, banks, billionaires, they have too much influence over our politics. And that's probably true. And yet, as soon as they feel that they've helped a politician, they openly try to influence them. I hate to tell you guys, but that's the same thing. You're no better than the corporations or the billionaires. You think you're better because why? The corporations and the billionaires, they're not trying to influence politicians for fun. They're trying to influence them because they have specific motivations and intentions. They want to increase their wealth, and they want to encourage legislation that will benefit their interests. And special interest groups are exactly the same. The problem with influence is that, sometimes it's unfair. If the corporation gets a special tax break, or let's say a building permit denied to smaller businesses, well, then they have a competitive advantage over those small businesses. It's unfair. The same goes for special interest groups. If environmentalists get some kind of Save the American Robin legislation, let's say, well, that's great for them. That's great for the robin, but it may end up restricting the land use available for oil companies or housing development, or perhaps the development of a school or something like that. There are negative consequences to legislation designed to benefit specific groups. There are sometimes victims. And in this case, in the case of Black Lives Matter, the victims are literally everyone. In fact, the primary victims of their influence would be vulnerable black people. Patrisse Cullors wrote an op-ed in Teen Vogue, which, why the hell is Teen Vogue printing Marxist propaganda? But anyway, she indicated in the article that she wants politicians to pass something called the Breathe Act, which she calls, quote, a legislative love letter to black people. It's anything but that. I'm going to get into what all this means, how the Breathe Act and BLM will destroy Black America, as well as Ilhan Omar calling Trump rallies Klan rallies in one moment. First, I have to sell you something. Hundreds of thousands in Oklahoma recently found themselves without power as a destructive ice storm flattened power lines and trees across the area. The fear of going days without power is the exact reason why I have the Fighter Flare flashlight. This is a professional-grade tactical ultra-bright flashlight. It's entirely solar powered, so I never have to worry about batteries dying when I need it most, or plugging into my wall outlet to charge. The Fighter Flare flashlight also comes with a life-saving emergency strobe setting, along with 4 other unique life-saving modes. The Fighter Flare flashlight can also be seen from 500 meters away. 500 meters is crazy, because it comes with 800 lumens, which makes it a great self-defense tool as well, because you can blind your attacker. Fantastic. The Fighter Flare flashlight is also a tongue twister, so you can play that game in the dark. But it also has a USB charger to charge your phone or any other device from virtually anywhere. So not only do you not have to worry about plugging it into charge, but you can also charge your other stuff with it. Awesome. It also has other essential survival tools like a compass, fire starting ignition lighter, which I love, wire cutter, and glass breaking hammer. It's lightweight, it's durable. This is the ultimate survival tool. Get the Fighter Flare flashlight at www.fighterflare.com or click the link in the description below. You get 20% off in celebration of the holiday season with promo code REAGAN20. It's all lowercase letters, REAGAN 20. Get yours today. I highly recommend them. Okay, so Patrisse Cullors, the founder of BLM, wants to now control the White House because she claims she got Biden elected. And first thing Patrisse Cullors wants to do is get this thing passed called the Breathe Act. So the Breathe Act has a section requiring something called a roadmap for prison abolition. Now, what the hell does that even mean? What it sounds like to me is that criminals will essentially be allowed to get away with anything with zero consequences. But actually, the Breathe Act goes way further than that. So first, let's get the little stuff out of the way. In one section, the act demands the dismantling of the DEA, ICE, Customs and Border Protection, as well as immigration detention centers. And it would also repeal all federal laws that criminalize human movement and border entry. Basically, the act would open the border completely. Are you a violent criminal, a murderer, a rapist? Do you want to move to the United States? Come on in. We won't even ask you your name. Our country is massive. Nobody's gonna find you here, and feel free to rape and murder anyone you like in our country. Our police and prisons have been abolished, so you can basically do whatever you want. America is Disneyland for rapists. And as I said, that is the little stuff. The Breathe Act is even more preposterous than that. So another section of the act compels the government to set up a commission to study reparation proposals for Black Americans based on, get this, mass criminalization, including the war on drugs, the criminalization of prostitution, and police violence, etc., etc., etc. Because the criminalization of drug use and prostitution was always just an attack on black people because everybody knows that only black people do drugs and are prostitutes. Essentially, Patrisse Cullors, founder of Black Lives Matter, equates being black and being a criminal. And okay, yes, black people commit crimes at much higher rates than other groups, but they're not the only ones committing crimes, and certainly not every black person engages in criminal activity. And the idea that laws criminalizing drug use and prostitution were developed specifically to hurt black people, it's just insane. This is part of the pseudo-history of America that some black people believe, and it's just mental. So apparently, not only are these things unjustly criminalized, but we also have to pay reparations to all black people because America imprisoned some black people who committed crimes. The Breathe Act also wants to abolish ankle monitors and the monitoring of phones of parolees. Basically, if you're out on parole, the state is not permitted to track you in any way whatsoever. You're basically free to do whatever you want. It's as if they don't understand the concept of parole. The Breathe Act then demands the removal of all police, armed security guards, metal detectors, and surveillance equipment from schools. And that sounds great because, you know, we're looking at students as criminals, and that's a horrible thing. But the problem is, some students are criminals, and some schools need those surveillance techniques to basically to protect the more vulnerable students. And you know what? I've made an entire video previously about this woman, Patrisse Cullors. Basically, she grew up in a family of criminals and was arrested herself for smoking weed at school. So maybe that's her problem with having armed guards at schools and metal detectors and stuff like that, because she's the kind of person they would be catching in order to protect the more vulnerable students. She's the bad student. She's the criminal student. She doesn't, oh, no, don't arrest any students. They're all perfectly good. No. She's the kind of criminal they would catch, and she doesn't like that naturally. We basically got a criminal telling us that we need to stop arresting people. I mean, it actually makes sense if you think about it. But here's the thing about Patrisse Cullors. She also went to a mostly white middle-class school, and apparently this made her hate white people. And now her vicious resentment is being channeled into her activism and promoting this kind of insane legislation. Basically, she's a horrible racist, and she wants criminals to be free to do whatever they want. But here's the thing. None of this stuff, none of this legislation, none of it will really hurt white people. At least not all that much. And that, I think, is what she wants. But what it will do is it will destroy the lives of black Americans. You see, there's this idea that, you know, heavy police presence in black neighborhoods is racist. But okay, logically, if you have, say, 5 regions of a city, and 4 of them have, relatively low crime, but one of them has really high crime. Where are you going to position all of your police resources? It's not rocket science, but here's the real tragedy. Sure, some black people are attacking white people, stealing from white people, vandalizing white-owned buildings, whatever. But for the most part, crime tends to be white on white and black on black. That is, most black crime hurts a black victim. So if we have a major problem with black criminality in this country, which we do, and you dismantle everything being done to combat crime, black criminals will be free to rape, murder, steal, vandalize, etc. against black victims. What Patrisse Cullors wants to do will infest black neighborhoods with crime. I mean, many of them are already infested with crime, but this will give total control of the neighborhoods to the criminals. The person you're hurting is the little old black granny whose apartment is raided, has all of her jewelry stolen, and then is beaten half to death for interrupting the thieves. The person you're hurting is the 13-year-old little black girl getting raped on her way to school without any consequences because you have abolished the police and prisons. And for the students who actually get to school unscathed, the Breathe Act demands that schools teach, quote, the political, economic, and social impacts of colonialism, genocide against indigenous people, and slavery. Basically, white people are bad. Okay, sure, because that's helpful and not all totally made up nonsense. But there are a ton of other insane things in the Breathe Act, but I won't bore you with all of the details. The point is that this idiotic act that is advertised as a legislative love letter to black people would be the single most destructive piece of legislation ever passed in America if these morons are successful. Honestly, classifying all black people as criminals and then abolishing the police and prisons, enabling black people to essentially just rape, steal from, and murder each other unimpeded, this seems like something white supremacists dreamed up and then tricked the idiot Patrisse Cullors into endorsing. I can imagine white supremacists watching this and shouting at their phones like, yes, pass that legislation. Let them just kill each other. It's perfect. But, believe it or not, conservatives are not white supremacists, and we don't actually want vulnerable black people attacked, robbed, raped, or killed. And in fact, our attempts to bring thieves, rapists, and murderers to justice, believe it or not, are attempts to protect the vulnerable from them. But, of course, the left has it backwards in an almost unbelievable fashion. The other day, Ilhan Omar called Trump rallies Klan rallies.
To speak about me at every single rally didn't really matter where he was,
Right.
sometimes multiple times in a day, as he had held his Klan rallies throughout the country,
Notice how it just rolls off the forked tongue of Ilhan Omar. It's funny, they say that a lie told enough times becomes the truth, and I think that's the case here because it doesn't sound to me like this was intentional. I don't think that she said this intending for it to be a slur. I think that this is just simply what Ilhan Omar calls Trump rallies. I think that probably at some point Ilhan, or somebody she knows, jokingly referred to Trump rallies as Klan rallies, and that this has, over time, simply become the way that she refers to them. It's just normal for her. So when she mentions Trump rallies in this interview, she doesn't even realize that she's actually said Klan rallies. Now, there are two lies in this case that many on the left have come to believe are true and that have led Ilhan Omar to using this term. The first lie is that Trump and Trump supporters are racist. If you turn on CNN, MSNBC, or you listen to these pundits talking about Trump supporters, they constantly characterize us as racists. And it's funny, just after the election, when we started to see all these voting irregularities and anomalies, everybody kept posting videos of vote counters, a lot of stuff that looked like cheating, And I tweeted about this. It was a simple observation. I wrote, why are all the vote counters black? Now, there may be some reasonable explanation for that, but part of the reason I wrote it was because it's just fun to see leftist heads explode over such things. And so, yeah, I was fishing for this a little bit. I was trying to provoke a bit of a response. But the reason wasn't pure schadenfreude. No, the reason was that I think it's important to make a distinction in our society between the recognition of race and racism. You can recognize that most basketball players are black without being a racist. You can recognize that most engineers are men without being sexist. And you can recognize that most male flight attendants are gay without being homophobic. And I think it's important to make those distinctions and to have those conversations and not shy away from them. So if I see an opportunity to provoke such a conversation, I will sometimes do so. And there is an element of schadenfreude as well. I'm not going to lie. I do love to watch leftists freak out over nothing. That's always a bit of fun. But yeah, I think part of the issue is that there is this presumption of guilt. If a black person makes an observation like this, or a bull-dyke lesbian, it's unlikely that a leftist would jump into the conversation section and then call them a racist. But because I'm a conservative, the assumption is instantly that I'm some kind of a bigot. And this has to be conditioned out of the minds of leftists. It's an insidious lie that has, I believe, more than anything else, led to the political polarization of the country. The second lie that has led to the Klan rally rhetoric is the lie that Ilhan Omar herself is somehow a focus of Trump and Republicans, as well as the underlying assumption that this has something to do with her race. Now, these two lies are very much related. If the first lie wasn't believed, then the second lie would lose much of its significance. But the second lie is interesting because it's a misperception of reality emanating from a massive well of egotism. Ilhan Omar is convinced that Republicans and Trump are focused on her, but we're really not. What we're obsessed with is dangerous political policies and lies being spread by those in media and politics. We're particularly obsessed with people who have political power and who spread these dangerous ideas like Marxism. There are several political figures who fit this description, but the reason perhaps that we talk so much about Ilhan Omar is that a lot of the stuff she has said is particularly egregious. She's also been linked to several scandals, causing many conservatives to perceive the woman as basically a criminal, not someone who should have the political power she wields. But she thinks that because she's black, because she's an immigrant, because she's a woman, that we Republicans have some kind of problem with her. No. We have just one problem with you, Ilhan, just one. You are a radical leftist. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Get over yourself. And I actually think Patrisse Cullors suffers from the same trap, massive egotism. She seems to adopt a victim mentality because victims tend to be the center of attention. Imagine getting into a terrible accident. The ambulance comes, the police, maybe a dozen people are scurrying about trying to help you. Bleeding out probably doesn't feel that great, but the attention is lovely. And then you're carried into a helicopter. You get a thrilling helicopter ride to an emergency hospital. Doctors and nurses rush to save your life. You are, without question, the center of attention. And I mean, it sounds absurd, but I do think that the attention that one gets from being a victim is indeed attractive to some people. And who is it that tend to get attention in our society currently? Women, black people, homosexuals, political activists. Patrisse Cullors checks all of these boxes. We should not be encouraging those with such severe psychological problems by elevating them and giving them power. Well, that's it for me, and be sure to click the subscribe button and the notification bell for more news and analysis. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant, it's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
I am eternally optimistic, and I happen to believe that we've made great progress from the days when I was young and when this country didn't even know it had a racial problem. The goal for all of us should be that one day things will be done neither because of nor in spite of any of the differences between us.